Hey everybody, it's Patrick Moore with Ironclad Wealth Management here. And I've got a quick video today on how to start a business in Georgia, just because I think there's a lot of different resources out there and it's hard to find one that just says, hey, real simply, here's step one, here's step two, here's step three. So that's what I wanted to put together today, and I hope it helps. So looking at this, what the first thing I need to say is this is not individual tax or legal advice, okay? Everybody's going to have their own considerations with how they need to set their business up, but these steps will kind of go through a process that you can follow and kind of customize to your own needs. So getting into it, there's three main reasons to actually legally form a business. And the first is operational, right? When you formalize the way your business is set up, it'll give you certain rules, regulations, and kind of things you need to do on a daily basis to kind of, continue to operate. The second thing is that it's legal. So forming a business properly can give you legal protections. And finally, the third reason that people form a business a certain way is tax reasons. So depending on which route you go, there may be pros, there may be cons from a tax perspective. And so something I'm going to try and do through this 7-step process is I'm going to try to show you where there's times you may want to talk to a professional and spend some money, and other times where, hey, you're probably good doing it on your own. So I'm just trying to be very straightforward and tell you what I think is best. Now, the first step to setting up your business is determining how you'd like it to be set up. And by that, I mean what structure you use. Do you use a sole proprietorship? Which really that just means it's just you that owns and operates the business. And all of that income flows through directly to your personal tax return. And the negative and downturn of the sole proprietorship is that you are personally liable for the business. Meaning if the business gets sued, all of your personal assets are on the line, which doesn't really sound good to me. Hope it doesn't sound good to you. The second thing is the limited liability corporation, or the LLC. Probably something everybody on this video has heard about. What the LLC does is it can be taxed in multiple different ways, and I don't really want to get into those on this call because that's a whole video on its own. But what it does is if you are sued, what happens is the business assets are essentially charged against, right, if you lose the lawsuit, but all of your personal assets are separate from those business assets. The third option that people hear about a lot is an S corporation, which most of the time is actually a tax election that an LLC makes. So for most purposes from a legal side, it's very similar to an LLC or exactly the same. It just has some different tax reasons to do it. And then the final option is a C corporation, where essentially you're setting up this completely separate entity that even pays its own taxes. And it's just a little more formal and has some significant differences and some benefits, especially if you're considering selling the business in the future. So I'm going to do a separate video that has a deep dive on the corporate structures, but this is the first thing you need to decide. And what I would do is this would be an area where I would talk to a professional based on your certain facts and circumstances on which one of these four options is right for you. So I promise you I'm not going to tell you to talk to a professional at every step, but this is one where I think it makes a ton of sense. And just make sure that the attorney, accountant, or financial planner you talk to focuses on working with small businesses, because this is something that you don't want to get wrong. Now, once you decide your corporate structure, the next step is to actually do the documents. If you don't do it, it don't matter, right? So if you're going to do an LLC, which remember an S corp probably falls under an LLC, what'll happen is the first thing you'll need to do is set up your articles of organization. These are going to govern who owns the business, who the members are, who the managing member is. It's going to go over like your corporate address, just like the basics, right? It's going to say, hey, this thing exists for this purpose, and that's going to form your LLC. For the C corporation, what happens is it's actually the articles of organization, which cover some similar, but they're a little more expansive than an LLC, and they're a little more formal. But it's going to be something that just, once again, states what the corporation is, what its purpose is, and then goes over kind of who is involved and who, owns the shares. Now, what happens is probably the most important agreements, and for the C corporation, it's a little mixed in here, but the most important agreement, I think, are the operating agreement and the bylaws, right? So the operating agreement is even more important than bylaws. And what that does is once your business is formed, it tells you how different relationships are managed, right? So let's say you have a couple of partners. What's going to happen if one of you passes away? What's going to happen if one of you decides to leave the company? How are expenses going to be allocated? If your partner Bob spends money, business money, on something that isn't for the business and isn't for you, how does that show up on the partnership tax returns, right? So there's going to be things like that that's in the operating agreement. And in the C corporation, the bylaws have more to do with like day-to-day management. They're appointing directors, governing the board of directors, and basically saying, okay, what do we need to do on a daily basis? Because typically C corporations are going to be things where they can be publicly traded, right? And there's just tons and tons of owners and shareholders. So those bylaws govern the actual day-to-day management, directors, things like that. So both of those are extremely important. Now, what I would say is that if you're on your own, LegalZoom.com, or just going on and finding a template version of, I'm going to use the LLC for now, of the Articles of Organization or the operating agreement is probably okay. But if you have more than one partner, and like all those scenarios I just listed may come up, and especially if there's always going to be a chance there's a dispute, right? If you have more than one partner, I would highly, highly recommend that you speak to a corporate attorney to get that operating agreement drawn up. So that is something that I absolutely would recommend. And another thing too is if you start on your own and add a member to your LLC, you may want to, you're probably going to have an attorney amend and update those agreements for you. Now, the next thing, once you've formed your company, so remember at this point, your company is formed. The next thing to do is to look at the Secretary of State website and actually register with the Georgia Secretary of State. Now, what you'll do is right here, because you haven't done this before, you'll do an annual registration with changes. So what you'll do, you'll create your login, and then what you'll do in here is you will create or register a business, okay? So that's going to be what you do on the Georgia Secretary of State website, and that's going to be something that basically sets your business up to move into the future, and you're then registered with the Secretary of State to do business in the state of Georgia. Easy, not too bad. Don't think you really need any help to do that, so just do that one on your own. Now, the next thing is business licenses. So the state of Georgia doesn't actually require much past additional registration. However, certain industries, cities, and counties may. So for example, if you do insurance, you're required to be registered with the insurance commissioner, which is the state of Georgia. If you're a financial planner, you might be with the state of Georgia, or you might be with the SEC at a federal level. Now, those are things that are going to vary by business to business. A big one is like food and alcohol licenses, right? But do that, and you just make sure to check, right? Make sure that you're kind of actually operating legally before you go into business. All right, so now that you've done that, the next thing, in your business is formed, your name is registered with the state of Georgia, so nobody can take it. The next thing to do is actually register for what's called your employer identification number. So your EIN is basically the social security number for your business. All payments, tax filings will all be associated with that EIN. And so this is something where, some of the companies that do like the documents, if you were to use LegalZoom, they'll say they'll get you your EIN for like 50 or 100 extra bucks. Let me show you how easy this is. If you do that and you just go to this IRS webpage, what you'll do is you'll click Apply Online Now. Okay, and you can just Google, EIN IRS. So if you apply online now, it'll take you through a system where you just begin application, and look, it's a 5-step process to go over exactly what your legal structure is, right? So the IRS knows, how you're formed and how you should be treated from a tax standpoint. And then it just, issues you an EIN right at the end of that. So that's something that I don't think you need any professional help to do. All right, now step 6 is to actually set up your bank account. So you've got your organizing documents, your business is formed and registered with the state of Georgia, and you've got your EIN. A bank's not going to open an account for you until they have that social security number to associate the tax documents with. So that's why you need to do that EIN first. And now you can start getting to work, start accepting payments, start issuing payments and receiving things at a corporate level. And remember, always, always, always to kind of keep that corporate shield, and for tax purposes, keep those business and personal finances separate. Have your own bank account and credit cards for the business. It's going to make your life easier. Now, the final step in getting started, and this is one that is a lot more important if you have employees, is to get registered with the Georgia Department of Revenue and the Georgia Department of Labor. So the Georgia Department of Revenue, if we look here, is where you make tax payments to the state of Georgia. right? What you do is you go to Georgia Tax Center. Actually, it looks like I already did it once, so it did a little, duplicate. But you log into the Georgia Tax Center, and this is where if you withhold payments, income tax payments from your employees' paychecks for the state of Georgia, this is where you set up your account to make those payments. And you also can make payments for any business taxes that you incur. So that is something that's going to be very important to set up for your business. Now, the next one is the Georgia Department of Labor. Just like the Department of Revenue, they have kind of their own thing going on. But you go in, you create an employer portal login, and this is what lets you set up your unemployment insurance rates, because what will happen is the earlier you are in your business, the higher your unemployment insurance rate will be. So what will happen is, once I think it's a year or two in, I can't remember the exact one, your unemployment rate goes down a tad, but it kind of gets you in their system and starts saying, okay, does this person have a high turnover or high unemployment at their firm, which can affect your tax rates? But you need to be registered here. So if you do have an employee become unemployed, that they've paid in to the unemployment system like they were supposed to. So that's 7 steps. Your business is formed. There might be some, irregularities or some specific things you have to do. But I hope that this video helped. I hope it was just a quick 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and it gave you some ideas of where you need help and where you don't. Now, as I mentioned earlier, I just wanted to do this to help. I typically work with business owners who've already gotten started in that 1 to 25 employee range. So I just wanted to put this together as a resource for y'all to kind of get started. Even if you're not in a position to become a client of mine, I'm still happy to take 20 minutes for an intro call just to chat, discuss where you are, and if there is anything you need help on, maybe I can help with like a quick answer on something. Or more likely, I might send you to an attorney or an accountant that I work with who can help you with a few of those steps. So at the very least, all I wanted to do was make sure that you had a nice, helpful video to help you get started. And I'm excited for you, and good luck.